Everybody, and welcome to the Preaching the Prodigy podcast.
Special edition.
Special edition for limited viewership. So, Jericho and I, as you can tell by our garb, are both fans of the University of Michigan Wolverines. We're both born in the Mitten State, and we love our Wolverines. So, this edition of the Preaching the Prodigy is all about the University of Michigan. Now, if you want to see our Week 8 predictions, which is really Week 1 for the Big Ten, those are going to be coming in another podcast. So just scroll through, check that out. That's available too. But this one is for those of you who are big Michigan Wolverine fans, or at least curious about the University of Michigan. We're going to take a few minutes and just talk about the season ahead for Jim Harbaugh and the University of Michigan Wolverines. So just kind of, we're gonna ask and answer 5 questions here about Michigan's upcoming season, the 2020 season. And Jericho, before we even get to those, would you agree with me that all of the unknowns about college football in general are also true about Michigan?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we've got clarity at this point about the schedule, but that can all change, right? We were already on schedule 3.0, but that could change. Some people are predicting for Michigan's 9-game schedule going like 4-2 because they're predicting 3 games could be lost due to COVID, things like that. Entire games could be canceled because of something that happens in Ann Arbor or in another Big Ten city. You could lose entire position units because of a COVID outbreak, let's say in the linebacker room for Michigan or an opponent. We are now almost to November, and we have seen nothing of Michigan's starting quarterback. So many unknowns that at this point, at the beginning of the season, it's pure guesswork, it's pure hunch, it's pure intuition, and it'll probably all be wrong. But that's what makes it fun. A season in which, for Michigan, coming off what was probably a peak season in their roster cycle, and they went 9-4. This year, probably expectations are lower. Wouldn't you say, Jericho?
Yeah, I'd say this is kind of Michigan's rebuilding year. They lose a lot of veteran players, including Shea Patterson. They got to rebuild at the quarterback position, and they just got to figure out how to make things work.
Some expected departures, and then maybe some unexpected departures here in 2020 with Ambry Thomas, a big loss. Really probably makes Michigan's cornerback position the weakest spot on the team. Nico Collins, who decided to come back after Tariq Black and Donovan Peoples-Jones departed, has now himself decided to focus on the upcoming NFL draft. So we just don't know what we've got. And for Michigan, the range of possible outcomes is as wide as any year I can possibly imagine. So we'll look back at this video in mid-December and wonder what we were thinking. But really anywhere from potentially as high as 7-1 to as low as
1-7.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they can lose to Rutgers or Maryland, but any other game is conceivably a potential loss. We just don't know. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask and answer 5 big questions for this upcoming Michigan year. We decided to try to ask questions a little bit differently than other people have asked them. So we have 5 questions of our own that we want to ask for this year. So let's start with question number 1, and that's this. Jericho, I'll let you go first. With all of those uncertainties we just mentioned, what are you most curious about? What are you most intrigued by to see in this upcoming Michigan football season?
I'm curious about how Joe Milton will step into the role that Shea Patterson took over from Michigan, was injured all last year. I'm surprised that he actually made it that good with injured foot. But I am really interested to see how Joe Milton, with his rocket arm, will he have the accuracy to hit like Ronnie Bell and other receivers, or will Michigan be a deep pass team with his arm from the heavens, or will they just run the ball all year? I don't know, but I'm really excited to see how Joe Milton plays out.
Yeah, and connected to that is kind of a curiosity, not about what's going to happen, but maybe what did happen. Why on earth did Dylan McCaffrey leave? this year would not have counted against him in terms of eligibility. Everybody's getting a free year this year. Dylan McCaffrey left before the season even started. It would seem to me like being part of a team, going through drills, even just being involved in team workout stuff would help him long term, regardless of where he chooses to finish his career. What I'm most curious to see is what Michigan's offensive identity is. You've talked about Milton, but let's think a little bit more broadly than that. I think this is a positive because Michigan has a couple of different potential identities. Could they be a spread to throw team, given all of the speed in space players that have been brought onto the roster? You're talking about Giles Jackson, Mike Sainristil. You're looking at younger players like Roman Wilson, who might be the fastest player on the team, being able to just take the top off a defense, and then involving A.J. Henning, and then maybe working over the middle with guys like Eric Hall and Nick Eubanks. Could they be the sort of team that is a smash mouth team? You look back at a couple of their bigger wins over the last few years to the Minnesota team a couple of years ago, 33-10, just giving the ball to Karan Higdon and Chris Evans and just pounding teams up the middle, involving Ben Mason in the run game. I think when you've got two big NFL-style running backs like Zach Charbonnet and Hassan Haskins, that is a potential. Mm-hmm. Is there the potential for them to become a kind of a screen team to allow Joe Milton to get some work in with easy passes to guys like Chris Evans and Blake Corum? And is that going to be the base offense for Michigan this year? All those things are possibilities. And I'm just most curious to see, what does Josh Gaddis say we want to define this offensive identity around? What's our base play? What are we going to make people stop first before we go to our secondary calls?
Yeah, I agree with you. But, I mean, really, I think that if Michigan is going to be a really efficient team on offense, their offensive line has to play big because they lose a lot of players. Jalen Mayfield thankfully comes back, but they got a lot of young guys on the offensive line. I'm really also excited to see how they go up against bigger Big Ten teams.
Yeah, me too. The offensive line is a curiosity. Losing guys like Mike Onwenu, Cesar Ruiz to the draft is big. But Ed Warner is one of the best position coaches in the Big Ten. And Michigan seems pretty confident in the guys that they have been building up in the system. And even some guys that are younger, like a Zach Zinter is a true freshman who just has come in with an NFL body. Will he be ready to make the line calls and be able to understand what to do when bullets are flying is a big question. So both of us are looking at offense as our most intriguing issue for the year, the item we're most curious about. So to question number 2. Other than Joe Milton, because I think he's an obvious choice, which player on offense and on defense is key to a successful season for Michigan? Let's start with offense. Who are you taking?
I would say on offense, it's got to be one of the running backs. I'd say that Zach Charbonnet or Hassan Haskins really has to come through over all the hype in the running back core at practice. I think Zach Charbonnet is going to turn into an absolute monster. He's going to run guys over. I think it's just going to have a breakout year, maybe 1,200 rushing yards over a season.
I think Zach Charbonnet is a really good choice, not only because of his rushing ability, but because of his pass protection ability. And that's kind of where I want to go. I'm going to say Ryan Hayes. I think we know what we have with Jalen Mayfield at right tackle, but to protect the blind side for Joe Milton, it's Ryan Hayes stepping into the starting role at left tackle. He's a guy who's gotten some work, who has a really high upside, potentially a future in the NFL, has seen, again, his body built up to be kind of that prototypical left tackle. And for Joe Milton to use that arm strength and to attack downfield, he's going to need time in the drop back game. And so a guy like Ryan Hayes being matched up on the blind side against a speed pass rusher is going to give Milton the opportunity to look further downfield for guys like Roman Wilson, Giles Jackson, who really can extend a defense by backing those safeties off. If Hayes can block and Milton has time to throw deep, that's going to unlock the underneath passing game for people like Nick Eubanks, Eric Hall, Luke Schoonmaker, and the screen game. But if Milton doesn't have that time, all of his ability as a long downfield passer is going to be mitigated, and he's going to be under assault. So I'm going to take Ryan Hayes. Your defensive player.
My defensive player, I think for key to win, I think that Aiden Hutchinson's got to step into the role, got to be kind of a Nick Bosa, Chase Young guy. Got to be strong enough to power through offensive linemen, but have to be quick enough, have to have good enough footwork to if he's double teamed, still get to the quarterback. But I think he's going to be good with his frame, with his overall raw talent. I just think it's going to be a really hard guy to stop in Big Ten, maybe all Big Ten team.
Yeah, I think if you would list Michigan's players top to bottom, I think the best player on the Michigan football team is Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to say Daxton Hill. I think Daxton Hill is probably the best athlete on the team. And I think given the questions that we have in the cornerback room, Daxton Hill's versatility to be able to move down and match up at the line of scrimmage with a wide receiver as needed, but also to play center field and to double cover when a guy like Vincent Gray or Jamad Green or Sammy Faustin has got a difficult matchup, I think is going to be important. I think Daxton Hill playing center field is going to come up with 3 or 4 interceptions, even though it's a shortened season. We've seen what he can do on special teams already. I think Daxton Hill on defense is going to be the guy as well. All right, question number 3. Who will be the breakout player, again, on each side of the ball? So we started with offense last time. Let's start with defense. Who is your breakout player on defense?
I want to say my breakout player on defense, I think it's going to be Vincent Gray. I think he's going to learn how to play Michigan cornerback football. I think he's going to match up well against bigger players. I think he's going to be an underrated underdog. Just an underdog in the Big Ten. And I think he's going to be a really good cornerback.
Yeah. I'm tempted to say Dorian Green-Warren. I would love him to have a breakout year. I think that would be really big for Michigan's future. If one of the true freshman cornerbacks, whether it's Dorian Green-Warren or Andre Seldon, breaks out and becomes a clear number 2 in the way that some Michigan freshman corners of the past have done. My pick is another true freshman, a guy who has not been receiving a lot of mentions, and that is William Apache Mohan. I think he may be the number 4 linebacker on the team right now, and if there is an injury or if there's a COVID issue with one of our linebackers, I see Mohan stepping in there. Really a fantastic athlete, probably a future Viper on this team, and I think he has a bright future. Another guy would be Makari Page, but I'm going to choose William Mohan on defense. Offense, your breakout player.
Offense, my breakout player, having the big arm that Joe Milton has, I think Michigan's going to find a way to adjust and get players downfield. I say that Roman Wilson will not get as much playing time, but when he does play, he's going to burn players, make big plays. And I think that he might not be strong enough to match up against one of the some of the better cornerbacks in the Big Ten, but he will be fast enough and faster than Sean Wade and some of those other guys. I'd take Roman Wilson in this case.
Yeah, I'm going to look at one of the bigger pass-catching options, and I'm going to go with Cornelius Johnson. I think that Eric All is another option for a breakout offensive player, but someone needs to fill that big play, downfield, jump ball type player or a red zone player. Nico Collins was in that role. Before him, Tariq Black was kind of in that role. And Michigan has always had that big 6-foot-plus guy who can go up and get it and just beat single coverage along the sideline. Cornelius Johnson was kind of locked into his spot in the depth chart by having those great upperclassmen ahead of him last year. I think he's going to break out for maybe 6 or 7 touchdowns this year. I think that that's a big ask in a shortened season, but I do think given the way that the Milton likes to throw the ball down the field, I think Cornelius Johnson is a really good choice for breakout offensive player. Okay, so 2 more questions. Question number 4, this is going to be as specific as possible. We're going to go with one crazy prediction that you've not heard anybody else make, for in all the talking heads, all the podcasts, all of the ESPN chatter, one crazy prediction about Michigan's upcoming season that you want to make.
My crazy prediction is that Zach Charbonnet will be first or second team All-American.
Wow. Tell us why that is.
So, I know the offensive line hasn't been the greatest, but with Ryan Hayes and Jalen Mayfield, those guys in the middle, I think that if the outside of the line, the guards start doing their thing, tackles on the outside. But yeah, if they run it outside a lot, I think Zach Charbonnet is going to get the edge. He'll have the footwork, he'll have the strength. I think he'll kind of be like a Marshawn Lynch type of player, a small, strong, kind of quick guy who can get to the edge and beat people. And even if they do get a hold on him, break that tackle. I think that Ryan Hayes, Jalen Mayfield, those other guys in the middle, they'll all have a huge year. But, Zach Charbonnet will get the job done. I say 12, 13 plus, 1,300 plus rushing yards, maybe 13 touchdowns, and second team All-American.
Wow, that's great. So I'm going to be even crazier than that. Again, a prediction nobody else has made, so the weirder the better. My prediction is at some point in this season, Michigan is going to need to use its third team quarterback, and that third team quarterback is Hassan Haskins in the Wildcat. Yeah, I'm telling you, this is off the wall. I think Michigan, with Dan Villari as a true freshman, they may just want to wait and not really fully trust him. We've seen Haskins in the Wildcat in the past in some red zone situations, some short yardage situations. But can you imagine if you've got potentially 10 blockers and Hassan Haskins, or you've got 9 blockers and Haskins with Giles Jackson or Mike Sainristil running a sweep, or even 9 blockers plus Zach Charbonnet in the backfield? I think that in some situations, just given Michigan's really good potential to be a good run blocking team, that if an emergency break glass situation were to arise, Hassan Haskins running a couple drives downfield as a Wildcat quarterback could be something in Michigan's future. Again, this is just based on the unpredictability due to COVID and Michigan's. There's nobody there at number 3 quarterback because of the McCaffrey transfer rather. I really like Cade McNamara as a passer in the intermediate game. I think he can win games for Michigan, and I think he may have a good future in college football. Again, given J.J. McCarthy coming in and what they say about Joe Milton, it may or may not be at Michigan, but I think Cade McNamara is a good college quarterback.
And you know what you said with Hassan Haskins being a Wildcat? I think that if the quarterback core gets COVID, all of them have to sit out, quarantine, I think Michigan's going to have to turn into an Army team. Run.
Yeah.
Period. That's all they do. Because I don't trust Hassan Haskins throwing maybe 10, 15 yards on an out route to maybe like Ronnie Bell. I still don't trust that.
And we're just talking way wild situations, but a guy like Mike Barrett was a high school quarterback. Is he more important to the team there than at Viper? Probably. So he's an option for us at quarterback. Maybe Ronnie Bell could do something given his athleticism. Maybe you want to go totally nuts in Daxton Hill, but I think you probably pull Hassan Haskins and use one of those old Arkansas Razorback, Miami Dolphin type straight up Wildcat formations where a tailback gets the snap from center with a man doing a jet sweep. Okay, last question. Here we go. Michigan's final record for this season. And let's just assume that they're playing 9 games. So let's go ahead and assume there are no games lost to COVID and that Michigan is, of course, playing in this Big Ten showcase at the end of the year. If they are, who are they playing and what's that final record?
Okay, so, with no one sitting out, no games being canceled, I think that and not including that last game, they go 5-3. But I mean, I think that they have to play Iowa in the last game because I think that they'll be, better than Michigan State, better than Indiana, better than all those teams in the East. The only two teams that will be better than Ohio State and Penn State, they'll be third. The only two better teams in the West for Iowa would be Wisconsin and Minnesota. So I think it'll be Michigan at Iowa. I'd take Iowa to win maybe a low-scoring, close one, 17-14. I'd say Michigan would go 5-4 in the year. This is their rebuilding year, so don't expect them to do anything crazy. I think they'll lose Minnesota, Ohio State, and probably Wisconsin. I think they might beat Penn State at home, but we'll have to see how that turns out. So 5-3, losing the last game to Iowa.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that Michigan goes 5-4, but I'm for some reason I feel like Indiana is going to get us this year. I am a believer in Michael Penix, Stevie Scott, Walt Fillier, and Indiana has lost to Michigan 247 years in a row, something like that. Eventually, they are due. I think Michigan preview for other podcasts. I think Michigan is going to struggle at Minnesota. I think that Ohio State just has way too much firepower to be challenged by anybody in the Big Ten this year, including Michigan. I think the Indiana game just one of those games where everything goes wrong, and Michigan drops that one. And I think they split the Wisconsin-Penn State game. I tend to agree with you. I think that just maybe motivation being what it is, I think that they'll go out and get the East Division team. I think that the loss of Journey Brown now for Penn State, as well as a couple of other players, including Micah Parsons, most notably, is going to hurt them. I think Michigan can beat Penn State. Wisconsin, just a huge question mark for me. Wisconsin is just a reloading system program.
Kind of like Michigan.
Well, no, I would say they're not like Michigan. I think Michigan does rebuild. Wisconsin, you just know there's going to be a guy that we've never heard of who's going to be a true freshman running back who's going to run for 1,500 yards this year, because the offensive line is their system and ball control. Is Garrett Groshek going to be their number one tailback? Probably not. Graham Mertz is going to take over because of Jack Cohn's issues. I think Wisconsin has some questions they need to answer as well. But I really think Minnesota is the best team in the West. We'll talk about that in our other podcast.
Going back to what you said about Indiana having always a close game at Michigan. Indiana's team that really scares me and you, whether we play at Indiana or at home, because Indiana does to Michigan what Kansas State or Iowa State does to Oklahoma. It's always a really stressing game for the favored team, and I think that Michigan might sneak this one out, maybe a field goal, maybe a touchdown. But I still think Michigan has the talent to beat Stevie Scott, beat Michael Penix, and I think that we're going to stop their also powerful run game. I'd say they barely sneak it out.
I'm inclined to say if Michigan played Indiana on a neutral field 10 times, they'd win 8 or more times.
Yeah.
This year, coming between the Michigan State game, which, regardless of what Michigan State's roster looks like and coaching staff looks like, will be an emotional, exhausting game, and then before the Wisconsin game, it's just a little bit of a trap game right there, and I hope Michigan can get up for it. Last year, they really played well against Indiana, one of their best games of the season. Shea Patterson was just on fire in that game, and I hope the same can happen. Again, going into that showcase game, it could be Iowa. I think Purdue is maybe another contender for that slot at the number 3 position. But Michigan, they've got work to do this year. I think the best way to look at this season is it's an extended fall practice, fall camp. I think that the roster does sort of peak again in 2021 when you get Michigan State you get Ohio State at home. So there's some possibilities there. But I think Michigan ends up 5-4 on the season. And given everything that's going on in the world, people feel okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how that goes on the season. Thank you for hanging in there through the whole 25 minutes of this podcast, and go Blue.